People said this was like The Sopranos, but what comparison did we make that seemed much more fitting?
007 or Mamma Mia? Where do you think of Pierce Brosnan, and could you go from liking him to hating him all in one series?
Did anyone else ever imagine that Helen Mirren would make them extremely angry?
We're used to hit after hit after hit from Taylor Sheridan, but as Guy Ritchie now built himself up to the same level of prominence.
We join a British crime family with MobLand on Paramount Plus.
Ahoy, ladies! Didn't see you there. Would you guys like to set sail on this ocean of flavor?
Randall, look at eye contact, please. You're gonna be cool, right?
Oh, baby, I'm as cool as the other side of the pillow.
Been staring at this board for days.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Act. Bears eat beets. My brain is on fire. I'm dying.
I am the one who knocks.
Bears beets Battlestar Galactica.
When they say 2% milk, I don't know what the other 98% is.
It's hard to believe we're even the same species.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Oh my god. The microchip has been compromised.
Dracarys.
And welcome back to another episode of Red and Red Real Reviews. So, we haven't done a Paramount show in a while, but this one I was pretty excited for. So, I started watching it when it was almost done airing. It was like 2 weeks away maybe from being done. So, I went into it, seeing that every episode on IMDb was no longer than an 8. I knew that it had Tom Hardy, Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren, and it's executive produced by Guy Ritchie. So, the bar was high. Right from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I found, going into it, I heard people say, like, this is like the new Sopranos, it's mafia stuff. Maybe because it's a family crime thing, but I don't know. I just felt a little bit like that comparison was not accurate at all. I've seen The Sopranos, and I did not get that comparison. And naturally, I was a little surprised when they opened their mouths and it's British and Irish accents coming out. I think I was expecting, since it was Paramount, I was expecting like an American crime family kind of thing, like similar to Tulsa King. But I don't know, that's where the similarities ended for me for Sopranos, just because it's a family. I actually likened it more to The Gentleman, which is on Netflix, and also is I don't know if it's Guy Ritchie written or if it's Guy Ritchie directed or produced, but that's what gave it the same vibes, I think, and the fact that it's also a very extremely heavily British show, very British. So all that being said, we have to let everyone know, should they watch MobLand?
I will say yes, but from the comparison standpoint, one, I can't compare to The Sopranos, so call me being late to the party there. I don't necessarily know if I can buy the Gentleman comparison though, because there are elements of the usual Guy Ritchie flair to it, but I felt like there was a bit of depth to this where the Gentleman felt a little looser and had a bit more of a comedic element to it. This one kind of felt like it was more into the weeds, and there was, I don't want to say like more of a serious tone to it, but it kind of felt like a little heavier and deeper to watch. The Gentleman was a bit more of an easier watch.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this one was definitely more of a drama. There really was no comedy at all. And I loved The Gentleman. That's going to be coming back for a second season. I absolutely loved it. But I do think it was a little bit more stylized, kind of, wasn't it?
The Gentleman?
Yeah, especially just with the music. But I mean, that I don't really watch theme songs. I watch this theme song almost every time because I love that song.
Oh, breaking news.
I am going to look up that song, and like I even was going to refer that song to my husband, be like, you need to listen to this. You will love it.
But like I said, I think it was absolutely worth watching, but it was different than I was expecting going in because they spent a lot of times building things up, a lot of story, a lot of character development to the point where it was at best 60-40 that to action. And I was expecting a lot more action. I was expecting some Tom Hardy ass kicking moments. And when I think of mob and mafia movies, shows, that type of content, I want a fair amount of ass kicking.
Yeah, it didn't really seem like the epitome of a mob or mafia show. Again, it's like a family, but there's no organization. There's not
Right.
the slots and the hierarchy to the family. It's just a family where Conrad is the patriarch and Maeve is the matriarch, and then it's the kids. Like, it didn't really have the makings of a mob thing, especially it wasn't violent. There was some language, of course, but it wasn't. To your point, I think it was all psychological, right? It's kind of like, who's in cahoots with who and who has the appearance of being loyal but maybe isn't. Manipulation, with Maeve manipulating her grandson,
Everyone.
Eddie. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think it was a lot more psychological than it was physical. We had a couple scenes where like Zosha and Kiko and Harry kind of like effed people up. But other than that, it wasn't really overtly violent. By the way, in regards to the violent point, I wanted to say to Guy Ritchie, who executive produced this show, to the team who wrote this show, guys, this is how you make an engaging, great show without desensitizing people to shit they don't need to see. Take notes, Taylor Sheridan, because there was no graphic stuff shown in this show at all. There was nothing where I was like, oh, I need to fast forward this. There was...
So you did fast forward through the Serafina and Brendan scene?
Serafina. Well, that one
I thought to myself, she is guaranteed squeamish right now.
I kind of like bore down. I was like, this is very difficult to watch, and especially with Serafina screaming and stuff. But for what it is, which is someone taking a chainsaw to a human person, it wasn't really as bad as I thought it would be. That sounds crazy, but that being said, there was implicated sexual assault. We didn't see any of that. Bravo, Guy Ritchie and team. Honestly, I was really impressed by that. And I think for me, it started getting really especially exciting in the third or fourth episode, because the first few episodes, like you said, there's less action. It's more exposition. So the first few episodes, you're kind of trying to learn the family tree. You're trying to see who the characters are, who they're related to, keep those relationships straight. So it's a lot of exposition in those first few episodes. But once things kind of pick up steam and you see the inner workings of, oh, okay, things are not what they seem. We got things going on in the background that are pretty crazy. It's like, who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? Who's in cahoots with others? So yeah, I didn't get into it until the third episode, but once I got into it, I didn't feel like I was, kind of tapping my fingers like, all right, let's get this going. I'm bored.
I did a little bit. I felt like it was really episode 5 for me. Like maybe at the end of 4, but episode 5 for me. That was kind of the second half of the show had a much different feel than the first half of the show.
For sure. And I actually, can I say, I don't normally love Pierce Brosnan. Like, I kind of think of him as, oh, he's that guy who like sang kind of terribly in Mamma Mia. Like, I kind of have this connotation with him that he's a little bit cheesy sometimes. So I wasn't really sure how he was going to be. Again, I first heard it was like The Sopranos. So I'm like, okay, so he's going to be in this gritty mob show. Like, how is he going to stack up? And you know what? I thought he was absolutely fantastic in this. Like, we'll talk about the last scene that they're showing him, but I really loved him in this role. I thought he was great.
I thought he was fantastic too, even to the point, and we'll get to it later about how I kind of feel about how his character, how
Mm,
Conrad developed quite a bit. Um, but it's funny that you think of Mamma Mia because the first Pierce Brosnan to me is always 007. Because by the
right.
time I was at an age where I could really appreciate the 007 movies, he was my first James Bond. So like I can't look at him and not see James Bond.
I mean, I do think of him in that, but I mean, wasn't he like a little bit cheesy in that too? Like I
Oh,
don't think of the James Bond movies, especially like the Pierce Brosnan ones, as being the epitome of like great acting, you know?
well, the second two weren't as good, but Goldeneye was very good. The second two weren't the best, but I thought Goldeneye was definitely. I mean, for considering it had, I don't know how many years had gone by since the previous Bond film, but I think it had been quite a bit because the previous one
Mm.
was either Timothy Dalton or Roger Moore. So I think it had been quite a number of years before they brought 007 back, and I think GoldenEye definitely hit the mark for me. The other two not so much though. So I won't disagree with you for 2/3 of it.
Yeah, I mean, I just had this thought of him being kind of cheesy. So I was pleased when he's playing a very masculine role. It was fun to see him as like with the Irish accent, just to see him be so cheeky and everything. That was cool. I thought it was a great role for him that he hit it out of the park.
He could pull off being a dirtbag because
Like, oh yeah.
Conrad Harrigan is a scumbag that he can pull, and he
Oh
pulled that
yeah.
off.
Oh yeah. And speaking of amazing acting. So obviously we could speak at length about Helen Mirren. We could speak at length about Pierce Brosnan and Tom Hardy, who has had a lot of good roles. But let's talk for a second about the other slightly familiar faces that we should acknowledge, because I thought these handful of people were excellent, ranging from 3 or 4 episodes to being in all 9 or 10. I thought there were so many good performances in this ensemble cast. So what was one of the familiar faces that you had to look up because you were like, wait, what do I know that person from?
One of them is someone that he's in so much, but he's never a leading actor, and he's always the same type of like swarmy type of character, and that's that shrivelly little dirty cop that's
Mm-hmm.
playing the police angle, and he's also playing on Richie's side too. And I had to look it up for not only the character's name, which was Colin Tattersall, but also
Mm.
the actor's name, which is Toby Jones. And I watched a movie with the called The Instigators recently with Matt Damon and Casey Affleck, and he was in that, and I remembered him from that, but it took a while for me to really remember him. Like he's got that face you see all the time, but you can't really like say, oh yeah, it was that movie. Oh yeah, it was this movie. The movie I always think of first, he played the little scientist that was kind of the Third Reich Nazi kind of scientist that was working with Red Hood in the first Captain America movie. That's the first thing I always think of him. And
Mm.
ironically enough, he was also in Hijack, which is one of our best performing episodes of our show. So between that and the Instigators, he obviously got a lot of Apple on his resume.
Yeah. Yeah, I recognized him too. I was like, what do I know this guy from? Was he some sort of bad guy in a movie? I couldn't place it. So looking
Oh,
through his yeah, looking through his filmography, he's been in so much, but I couldn't really say that I identified him from any one thing. Maybe it was Captain America, but he just has that familiar, unique looking face. And I looked up that he's also played the voice of Dobby in Harry Potter video games. And I don't think all the Harry Potter movies, but 1 or 2 of the Harry Potter movies. So that's kind of interesting. The fact that physically, he's kind of a short little guy, and then he plays the voice of Dobby, who's like a little tiny creature.
Master has given me a sock.
Yeah. So that was kind of ironic. He's done some voice acting and stuff. But yeah, he was only in I think 3 or 4 episodes, but he made an impact because you were kind of wondering what his next move was going to be and how he would turn out. And another person that was like that you mentioned in your notes was Kat. I instantly saw the lady who played Kat, and her name is
Actually, I have
Janet.
I have a really funny note about that because when Harry first calls her and like they're
Yeah.
doing the slow camera pan up, I don't know why I'm thinking, and like maybe it's because I started to see the bottom of medium length blonde hair, and I was thinking, oh my God, Catherine O'Hara is doing something else. Like I had this thought in my head that the camera was gonna pan up and it was gonna be Catherine O'Hara because she's just so much lately.
You thought she looks like Catherine O'Hara. Who did I think that she kind of looks like? But yeah, she's another one. Her face looks so familiar. And then I thought about it and I was like, that's the lady from Jessica Jones. She played Jessica Jones' mom in that last season, which was kind of a weird role. And then she's also from Ozark, which you didn't watch, but yeah, her name is Janet McTeer. She's a working actor. She's done tons. And yeah, it was interesting seeing her in a role like that. She was, I think, the only American in the show, wasn't she?
Oh, probably. I didn't even think of that, but probably she could
She
have been.
didn't
Now that I
she
think
didn't
of
have
it,
an
she didn't have an
accent.
accent.
Yeah.
Jinx, you owe me a
Yeah.
Diet Coke. Um, yeah, like I thought the same thing, familiar face, but couldn't place it. And I'm like going through her bio, and the only thing that like I saw that would have stuck out to me, she was in The Menu with Ray Fiennes, and I don't necessarily remember her from that, but I really liked that film. So I'm almost wondering if just her face was maybe subliminal in my head. So like I see her and I was like, oh, I know her because I really liked this movie, but I couldn't place her to it.
You know what? I just remembered who I thought that it struck me that she looked like. I felt like her mannerisms and like maybe it's the bottom half of her face or the top of her face. She looks a lot like Jane Lynch to me because Only
That's fair.
Murders in the Building, you haven't watched that show, but Jane Lynch is on there. She plays like Steve Martin's body double, so she's
Hmm.
she kind of dresses a little bit masculine,
Yeah,
and that's who she reminds me of. Like her
that's
face is a
fair.
little bit different, but something about Jane Lynch was like, oh man, that's who she looks like.
That's totally fair, and it's funny that you said like half of her face because I thought the same thing, like something like something either the bottom half or the top half. It was like some kind of split thing where something was familiar either down here or up here.
Yeah, I think it's just that her nose is quite different than like Jane Lynch, but something about her, either her eyes or her mouth is just totally Jane Lynch for some reason.
Hmm.
I don't know what it is. And then some other familiar faces that I saw. Obviously, right away, I noticed Kevin, who the actor's name is Patty Considine. I don't know if I screwed that up, but he's from House of Dragon. And it took me a second to realize it because obviously he doesn't look as old and he's not in
Yeah,
all that period costuming. So
no
it's
long
hard.
hair.
Yeah, he's got like the kind of like short, stylish, spiky hair. So it was weird to see him in that context. But I said to myself, "Oh my God, that's the king!" And I had to look it up because I couldn't remember his name because all the names are similar in that show.
Yeah,
So I realized it's King Viserys, and man, I this guy, I sort of hope that he gets some sort of award or nomination for like a Golden Globe nomination for drama. In the last couple of episodes, especially, he was outstanding.
took
Like
it up a
when
notch.
yes, when Kevin was kind of hitting his breaking point and Harry was wondering, is this guy going to be okay? This actor was phenomenal.
Well, that and also the last scene with Bella where he's like ready to lose his shit on her, and she kind of instantly not I don't want to say comforts, but like comforts
Yeah,
confides
consoles.
that sort of consoles. Thank you. She kind of
Yeah.
like consoles him, and all of a sudden his emotion changes on a dime, and I'm like, that's freaking good. That's freaking good acting right there.
He was so good. He was so good at being like tortured, like
Mhm.
this level of unhinged where you actually feel sympathy for that
Yeah.
character because of what they've been through. So he was just phenomenal, I thought.
The scene with Rusty too, where he's like calling him out for it, which wasn't totally. I was very, very lost on the whole Rusty angle thing for most of the show until it was kind of revealed what happened to Kevin in prison. Even and so like, but like that scene was kind of like also very, very good for him too. Especially like
Yeah.
he's in this moment of high emotion, and then he puts a bullet between his eyes.
Whew. That
Yeah.
was yeah, that was rough, but he was so good at that. And another person who I think deserves like an honorable mention or acknowledgement is Jan, who is played by Joanne Froggatt, which is a very British name, and she's from Downton Abbey. So she was on Downton Abbey for years. She was in all the movies, resumed her role, and she I don't know what it was. Like, I've never seen someone have negative chemistry with someone. Do you know what I mean? So, like, the fact that her marriage with Tom Hardy's character, who is Harry, the fact that their marriage is so like strained and they're having issues, and we find out that he actually was sleeping with Bella for a while at one point, right?
Hmm.
So the fact that their marriage is in shambles, she had the best, like, awkward, bad marriage chemistry with Tom Hardy. I don't know. It was so weird. Like, it was a weird chemistry, but you really believed that they were a couple who's struggling with their marriage. Like, you're taken out of it where you're like, these are just actors. Like, you really believe that they're basically like almost estranged from each other, you know?
Yeah, Jan. I like Jan. I mean, I felt like her role was kind of just there to give Harry some conflict.
Mm.
Um, so I don't necessarily know how much like of a major effect she had on the story, but just in that kind of light to give some other angle to Harry that's not just the strong arm of this mob family was a different take.
Yeah. And to your point, I don't think she served a purpose to move the story forward, but she just kind of served as like a representative of Harry's side of life,
Yeah, which
in contrast to the Harrigans.
yeah, and which I almost to that point, I almost kind of feel like, at least to me watching it, Gina was kind of more of a Mercury point, whatever that expression is, than Jan was, because there was a lot more until the very end. There was a lot more infighting I felt
Mm.
between Harry and Gina than Harry and Jan. Like Harry and Jan, it was kind of like we know we're not on good ground right here, but we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, it kind of just that uncomfortable silence where as actors, they're creating that tension for the viewer by not interacting or for being very evasive. So that was
Yeah.
interesting. That the whole dynamic of that little family was interesting. And speaking of family, Serafina, she's played by an actress named Mandeep Dylan. I don't know how to pronounce that. She looked really familiar. She's very pretty, like a pretty Indian looking woman. And I realized she's from a Ricky Gervais show that I watched, Afterlife. If you haven't watched it on Netflix, it's amazing. It'll make you laugh so hard, it'll make you cry so hard, but I highly recommend it. And so, yeah, she was kind of in a little bit of a comedic role in that show. So I thought she was good with what she was given, but I would have liked to see more of Serafina, I think.
I liked her character a lot, actually. I don't know if the way this season went, if it would have added anything to it, it would have would have just made it more confounding and informationally confusing.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, if this show does continue, which it seems like there's a possibility of it, I could definitely see her as a very prominent role in any future instances the show would have. Because I think her character is definitely cemented as a bit of a power player.
Yeah, I see that too. I hope she has a more prominent role if there's a next season.
That's like that being said, to all these characters, I did not recognize any of them other than Kevin. And like I just recognized him right away, and I just didn't put it together with King Viserys, and I'm kind of upset at myself that I didn't because I really liked King Viserys, so I'm kind of upset that that didn't ring a bell.
Yeah, he was the most obvious one for sure. And just to round out the familiar faces, the last one I wanted to mention was Alice or Nicola. I don't know what we want to call her, her undercover name or her given name, but she was played by an actress named Emily Barber, and she's been in Bridgerton. She's also been in The Alienist. So I I couldn't place what I had seen her in, but she just had one of those faces where you're like, I know I've seen her in like a bit part somewhere and I can't figure out what it was. But what was interesting about her was that she obviously played undercover. So there were moments where she was like calling up Jan and playing into something or getting her to do something. So she was, fake crying on the phone and all these things to get Jan all riled up, like, oh, you have to go meet me. I'm having a hard time right now. And then she'd kind of turn it off, hang up the phone and be like, mic drop. Like, so that was funny that she's an actor playing an undercover person who is acting. like,
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the Alice character, and maybe it's because of that kind of backstabbing nature on Jan.
yeah.
It just there was something about her that I was not a fan of her character. Not saying it was necessarily an unconvincing acting job, but her character didn't grasp me at all. Like,
Well, I think it's because she's obviously befriending someone to make her useful so that she can put people away. So yeah, it's very, not the best intentions. Like, yes, you're trying to put away these criminals, but like you're kind of being mean to this poor woman who has no idea that you're her friend just because you're trying to get through to someone that she knows. Like,
yeah, she's caught in the middle and being used as a pawn for no reason.
exactly. So I could see how, yeah, I wasn't super fond of her either, but I think, that's just the nature of the character. Speaking of nature of the character, so when we reviewed Mayor of Kingstown, this was in the first season of our show, we talked about kind of good and bad and how usually a person is the other, one or the other, but sometimes there's like a very thin line between good and bad. So it's some people kind of wrestle with which they are and like they're not sure. So in that circumstance, we were talking about the main character, Mike, in Mayor of Kingstown, who's played by Jeremy Renner, and how he kind of straddles that line between good and bad. So kind of wanted to talk about these characters as a spectrum of good and bad. Like, where do they fall? Which ones are inherently good? Which ones are bad? Are there ones that you see as kind of like a murky thing between the two?
Well, it was funny because I saw you write down Harry, and I didn't necessarily feel like Harry was really towing the line too much because I felt like everything about Harry was that he was a good and honorable character, and especially in that final scene with Kat, where he, despite the fact that Conrad and Maeve are this absolute disaster of two people, disaster of each in their individual right, and disaster together as a couple. And he still will not, like, that. That this is my job. This is what we do. I'm not going to turn on them. Like, so I still think he was a very honorable character. It's just the fact that he's stuck in this position because of his job where he has to serve these people that are not like him. So I don't necessarily think Harry was so much toeing the line like Mike did in Kingstown, but he was just kind of a good person stuck in a bad or immoral position.
I just saw some parallels between him and Mike on Mayor of Kingstown. Like, they're literally both fixers. They both
Yeah.
remedy a situation and clean up bad things. And I didn't think he was bad or anything, in the sense that, I mean, he's an extremely loyal person. We see that in the end when he tells Kat to F off, basically, and he understands that he's going to be probably expecting some retaliation from her, if we're being honest. So, yeah, I mean, he's loyal to a fault, but, you know, I guess he's a more of a good person who has to do bad things as part of his job. Like the circumstance with having to kill the bartender because he really had to. He couldn't say no. He couldn't act hesitant because that would tip Ritchie off, and he needed Ritchie to believe him. So that was, I mean, it wasn't that graphic, but that was difficult to see, just how he had to, in that moment, kind of compose himself and be like, all right, I guess I got to do this. And he's like stabbing this guy like multiple times, and then he just kind of walks away very quietly with like blood all over him. And you just get the sense that like he had to do that. But yeah, he's a good person having to do bad things because of who he works for.
Oh yeah, Harry is an operator. So I mean that comparison to Mike as a fixer is definitely accurate. Um, he's like the soldier on a battlefield,
Yeah.
where you've got an assignment to take out X target. You got to take out X target, because if you don't do that, if it's not your ass on the line, it's gonna be someone else's ass on the line, and it may be your brother out there too. So it's like, if I don't do this, it may be Kevin that is the next victim in this wave of chaos, or whatever you want to call it. They maybe Jan and Gina. Like, if he doesn't do that, it might come back around and hurt someone close to him, and he's going to regret not taking that action. So, like, I kind of saw him in that kind of soldier sense, where this is just the directive he's getting.
He's very much a protector, like not even with his family, which is understandable, of course, his wife and his child, but he's very, very protective of Kevin, to the point where they are almost like brothers, because he just has this inherent nature to care for Kevin and make sure he's okay. So also another person who I would consider good is Kevin. I think he's a very tortured soul, as we'll get to towards the end. And I really feel bad for him, what he's been through. But, is he a little bit unstable at times? Sure. But inside, I think he's just so disillusioned by what's happened to him but I think he still has good intentions for his life and who he wants to be.
For what his character arc went through, he actually kept himself in composure a lot, especially when you consider how Conrad flies off the handle, Maeve to a certain extent, Eddie flies off the handle. Like, Ritchie is a walking ball of chaos. Like, you see all these mobsters and the other family members that, when shit hits the fan, so to speak, like, they go into berserker mode. And Kevin is more like Harry, where he kind of like keeps himself at a cool level and can still operate. So like that, like I didn't get any negative signs out of Kevin, especially with that tortured past. His tortured past. I feel like his role in what the Harrikins do is almost like he's kind of playing that game of chess, and as it gets towards the end and the chasm starts widening between him and Conrad, and he already has a very distraught relationship with Maeve, it becomes more obvious that he's kind of picking and choosing his battles because of a way to kind of circumvent their hierarchy of whatever the drug game of London is.
Yeah, I think that word composed is a really good word to describe him, because he's just kind of sitting back and looking at the crazy things that occur, like that scene with Archie, he's just like sitting in the family room like, what the hell is going on? You know, he acts very quietly. I think he just observes what's going on and he reacts internally. And I feel like despite his issues, he's pretty level-headed. You know, he's not like his brother Brendan, who's like a total dipshit and like, you know, just kind of spontaneous and impulsive and useless. Yeah. And I think, and especially at the end, I think that he's like, no, I didn't get credit for being raised how I was raised, and I'm going to come back and surprise you. Like, I'm going to do something impressive. Basically, like, I'm going to become something, and you're going to be sorry that you felt this way about me, because like, watch out world.
Yeah, and he was more of a cerebral character, whereas Harry is just straight operator. Mission, objective, completion. Mission, objective, completion. Like,
right.
Kevin is that he's kind of like putting the puzzle together and then operates. He's like, you see kind of the build up to the objective, as opposed to Harry, who just gets the objective and goes.
Yeah. So that's the good characters who I would say. Let's talk about the bad characters. Like, no question, just straight up bad. And you know what? I never thought I would say this, but this is the first time I actually like genuinely hated Helen Mirren in any movie or role. Like, she was such a bitch, like mega bitch, man.
And from start to finish, like, there was no point throughout the entire duration of the show where you looked at Maeve and thought, this is a redeemable character. Which, to your point, you say this is the first time. This is the first time you hated Helen Mirren. To that point, I think that just speaks to the gravity of Helen Mirren. The fact that this like usual sweet old lady or like power player in, you know, some hierarchical organization, whatever the case may be, is her normal thing, and then she could just play this absolute wrecking ball of a biatch.
Every little snide comment out of her mouth, like, I was like, I just want to punch you, Helen Mirren. Like, I was getting so frustrated with her, but that's the testament to her acting like a total mega bitch and being good at it. Because, like, I think I've mentioned it before, I have an extended family member who has met Helen Mirren and says she's absolutely the nicest lady you ever could meet in your life. So that's really how she is. So the fact that must have been fun for her, the fact that she had to play such a, like you said, irredeemable, completely not, like, she was very consistent the whole time. Like, you just hated her the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, it went as far as like every time Serafina's name was invoked, she couldn't stop herself from saying something negative, whether she's chastising Conrad for whatever his philandering was in the past, whether it was playing her little game of manipulation with Kevin. And then, of course, she like is so adored over Brendan, her son with Conrad, but he's such a, you know, useless little baby. It's just like, and then of course, when it comes to Eddie, she's like giving him up all this glow up when everyone else in the show can't stand Eddie, rightly so. And she's the one that's like, you're the real Harrigan. You show the toughness and the balls that, you know, emulates this family, that sort of thing.
And especially the way that she manipulated him. And I think it might have been the third or fourth episode when things kind of, you know, came to a head, and she says to him like, oh, okay, so we're going to make things interesting now. Like, we're going to wait till you see what we're going to do or something. And then I was like, oh my God. So she's manipulating Eddie to like do her bidding for her like everything messed up that goes on with the Harrigan family, and everything they do is basically a decision that she has made and told manipulated Conrad. Oh, you should do that thing. And oh, yeah, you should totally kill Archie because he's against you. And like she just kind of on a whim thinks these things, like doesn't really think them through or like find evidence that, this certain person is the rat. And then like I imagine thinking about that when it comes out later that Archie was not the rat, but you have Conrad sitting there like, oh, okay, I just killed one of my like grade school friends. Great.
Yeah. Just killed my best friend. What was that
Because you were
expression?
wrong.
What was that expression they used? Sticker screw or sticker plug or something?
Oh, yeah.
And they used it. Well, see, I think that's my point though, because they used it twice in that first episode, and then they never used it again the rest of the show. I thought that was going to be like the catchphrase of the show.
Yeah, it just like I just hated her always being in Conrad's ear, in Eddie's ear, like, oh, well, like she's like the devil on the shoulder, like, oh, well, you really should do this because this person hates your guts, and like.
And then to that point, at the last scene when Conrad and Maeve are talking to each other on the phone in prison, there we go with the millennial phone sign again. When they're talking to each other on the phone in prison, and he's like challenging her. So you're like, oh, okay, there's a rift between Conrad and Maeve. Here we go. It's getting juicy, right? It's right at the finish line here. And then she's like, oh no, well, this is what I do, and everyone, that's what you like, and that's why you're in love with him. And he's like, okay, yeah, you're right, I'm in love with you. And it's like, what?
It was just so pathetic to me that she was just like it was almost like she was hypnotizing him, like, you will love me even though I'm a mega bitch.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like she was awful. And then Eddie was just like, in the beginning, he was just an inconvenience and a little turd. But by the end, I hated that kid.
I hated Eddie from the get-go. He just seemed like seemed like a spoiled brat. And then you find out that he's the product of this semi-incestual thing, and then he's like trying to play this game with Gina where, trying to get in her pants, and she somehow goes for him anyway. But
I didn't get that.
It was like he was like, everything about him was just spoiled, preppy frat boy. And then you have Maeve kind of pulling his puppet strings, making him into this little ruthless killer. It's like there is nothing about this character to like. Plus, he looks like a freaking little vampire.
He does. I actually didn't look up that actor, but I'm wondering what he's from. But yeah, didn't he kind of like, he just looks like a I don't want to say it, like a vampire kid or like Draco Malfoy kid.
Yeah, like Draco, or like a background character in Twilight, or one of the Donnie Darko boys.
Vampire,
like
right?
Yeah.
He looks like he's got the face of a vampire.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. If vampires are real, apparently they are, because there are. I think I've seen like True Life, I'm a Vampire. And like, there's people that literally drink blood. Like, they're into vampire culture. Like, it's weird.
That is one rabbit hole I've not gone down.
It's a thing. Trust me. Just don't look it up. But okay. So we have the definitely good people. We have the definitely bad people. Where does Conrad fall for you? Kind of a tough question, right?
Oh, to me, Conrad is ultimately winds up as bad. It's just shrouded for a bit, because I don't know whether it's just going into the show and seeing two warring families, or having this or more positive connotation of Pierce Brosnan than negative, whatever the case may be. But you feel like, okay, like he's a major drug kingpin, so he's not a good guy. But you've got this Ritchie guy who is definitely bad. And then they introduce Jaime, who's kind of more of an operator, but also definitely bad. And they introduce Kat a little later on, who not necessarily gives off the bad vibe, but gives off like super mega power player up here. So she's probably more bad than good. So you still kind of have this, okay, Conrad is probably like the lesser of all the evils. And then as it goes along, and he has that blow up with Kevin on the other side of the prison conversation, whatever they
Mm.
call that cell thing, with the gray telephones. And then of course you find out that he's Eddie's father because he was banging Bella when Eddie was in prison or whatever. Like so you just like the imagery you have of Conrad, and of course he's like riling up the prisoners at the end, which you think like,
Yeah.
okay, well this is Conrad's like kind of rise back to prominence. He's gonna get out of jail and have this like mass army of loyalists of all these like murderers, rapists, thugs, whatever,
Hmm.
and he like kind of degrades that original assumption that you have that okay maybe he's like not the worst bad guy to the point where it's like, no, this guy is total scum. He will crush anyone in his path, even if they're blood.
Yeah, I could support exactly what you're saying, that it is kind of muddy and it goes back and forth during the show, but by the end you land on the fact that he is truly bad. And for a while, like I mean, I kind of felt like I was not wanting to believe that he was as bad as he appeared.
Yeah,
Like obviously when he kills Archie, you're like, this guy is ruthless. Like he's just gonna kill a big longtime friend of his. But then, you'd see Maeve being so manipulative, and you're like, you know what? This guy is just a freaking pushover. Like
yeah,
he's just whipped. His wife calls the shots, and he's a little wimp. But
yeah,
but then so you're kind of like, well, is he a victim of his overbearing? Well, overbearing is like an understatement
yeah,
completely, but is he just a victim of his wife and in her like wily ways, or is he just a bad guy? And then when he didn't even know, I forget what it was. There was something that Maeve and Eddie orchestrated and he didn't know about it, but then he took credit for it with Richie to be like, yeah, I did that. You know what I mean? Like to make it seem like he was all big and bad. But yeah, I don't know. He was kind of,
oh yeah, I know there was a phone call where I think it was like after Tommy's funeral, and they
oh, that
called
was
that they called
when
him to
they,
kind of pull a power play on Richie, and Eddie
yeah.
just grabs the phone. It's like, yeah, I did that. I stabbed that mother effer,
And like
whatever it
he had
was.
no knowledge of Maeve and Eddie, or Maeve basically setting that
Yeah.
up. Like didn't they like go into a warehouse and just like kill everybody
Hmm.
after the funeral? So it was yeah, it
Well,
was
that
something
was
that,
when they took Serafina and Brendan. The warehouse
yeah,
scene.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just like he's taking credit for something that he didn't really do or have knowledge of, but just to like puff his chest out and be like, oh yeah, I did that. Like, no,
Yeah.
you didn't, you loser. Like,
Yeah.
I just kind of felt like he just, yeah, he wasn't this big, like powerful man. Like he was just letting his wife call the shots for him. And you can see that's how it's been all these years.
Yeah.
Um, so in the last two episodes, the truth comes out in a big way. All these secrets are revealed. You mentioned the truth about Eddie's true lineage. And you know what? I'm not sure. I can't really pinpoint the moment where it happened, where that crossed my mind. But when it did finally, and I was kind of wondering if anything was going to be said about that. I was like, am I reading into this that like Eddie is not Kevin's son, or is this a real thing? So then in the last episode, the beginning of the last episode, Kevin is kind of spilling his guts to the guard from the prison that he had just killed. So he's sitting there at the kitchen table, like spilling all these. Oh man. And the way that he says, yeah, well, my son is my brother. And you're just like, what the hell? Like, you're like, that is true.
The first thing, and I don't necessarily know whether I thought that was the direction they were going to go, but the first thing that kind of tipped my hat is Maeve's trying to play her game with Kevin, and he's a little bit impervious to it.
Mm,
But when she says you and your brother are supposed to be the heirs, because she's on her typical tirade
mm,
about Serafina, whatever, and he makes some comment of like, well, that's not going to happen anymore because obviously Brendan's dead. And
right.
she goes like, oh no, your other brother, and Kevin loses his mind. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what is he like? What just ticked him off so much on that?
You know what? I actually, now that I'm thinking about that, when I actually, something about before that made me suspect that Eddie maybe wasn't his son. But when she said your other brother, my mind went to Harry
Yeah, like the
because,
adoptive son.
yes. And
Yeah.
because she had tried to like whisper in Conrad's ear, like, "Ooh, is Harry like loyal to you or not? Like, you better question him or
Hmm.
something." Like, she was putting doubt in Conrad's mind about Harry's loyalty. So that's when she said, "Oh, your other brother." I thought she was talking shit about Harry.
I figured that was probably what she meant as well. I
Mm.
definitely did not at the time did not see the Eddie thing coming, but hindsight being 2020, that was definitely the tip of the cap towards Eddie not being what we thought he was.
Oof. Yeah, that was rough. And then so really I think it all kind of came to the main climax, I would think, of the last two episodes was Kevin visiting Conrad in prison and just lets all this stuff loose. Not only does he let loose the fact that, well, my parents are monsters. So obviously this is why I am the way that I am and why I've had so many difficulties just growing up, because you guys are monsters. And I know that I am not the father of my son, all this difficult stuff he unleashes. But when he sits down, the first thing he says is, yeah, Archie wasn't the rat. O'Hara is the rat.
Mhm.
So what were your thoughts on O'Hara, or like the mistaken rat situation?
That was well, I think that scene with the two of them was after Harry and O'Hara kind of had their thing. So I think we had known that at that point already. Um, but to me, it was she never gave me like I don't know that I didn't suspect her to be the rat, but it also didn't shock me because she gave me this. She wasn't in a lot of the show, but when she was there, she kind of gave this swarmy kind of vibe. Like she wasn't really a loyalist like
Yeah.
Harry, like Kiko, Zosia. Like she didn't give that loyalist vibe. So when she came clean to Harry, or when Harry called her on it, whatever whoever initiated that, um, it didn't shock me one bit that that was the case, and then it also kind of made me jump back to the Archie thing and kind of feel bad for. As I don't know if I could ever feel bad for Conrad, but kind of feel bad for Conrad in the sense of like he offed his best friend because he thought he stabbed him in the back, and really it was this lawyer, weak ass lawyer, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, I actually didn't know her name, and like I don't know if I just
I
wasn't
didn't
paying it.
either.
I said the blonde lady. That's what I called
Yeah.
her. But I like I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention, or to your point, she was not really in it very much. So
No.
it kind of seems like I don't want to say convenient, but it's like one of those things where the person at the end who did the crime, is someone who like you would never suspect because they were hardly in the show or movie, and you're just like, that was a little cheap. But I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't feel like it was cheap, because I mean, I guess she had this whole thing with Richie and she was kind of like double crossing him too. And I don't know, there was just this whole thing with her at the end. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really see that coming, nor did I know what her name was.
That's probably why the shock value to me was a lot less, because she
Okay.
wasn't she wasn't flying under our nose the whole time.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, she wasn't in a very prominent role. So you're it does kind of put doubt in your mind, where you're like, wait, is there something we're not seeing about Harry or somebody else who's like a main
Yeah.
player? Like the fact that she's kind of a side player and she ended up being the one was a little
Yeah.
bit they kind of pulled the rug out from under us in that way. But so yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting going forward, seeing what happens if or when there's a second season, because we had this situation where Eddie freaking tries to like, he's like squeezing his mother's head because she's angry that, you know, he was just floored by the news that Kevin's not his father. So he almost freaking kills Bella. And
And
then
ironically enough, Maeve thought he knew the whole time. Like, oh, you didn't know?
yeah, I'm not your grandma, kid. I'm not going to try
Yeah.
saying it in an Irish accent, but yeah, so that scene was crazy where literally if Zosha and Kiko didn't intercept, like she probably would be dead at the hands of her own son. And then of course she's like, I think she says like let him go or like get off of him. And it's like, dude, your little evil son just tried to kill you. So that
Yeah.
was
Well,
complicated to say the least.
even if it's Satan or Hitler, it's still your little baby.
I guess so. But yeah, and then we have a scene with Bella consoling Kevin and her divulging that she knows what happened to him and she had also been assaulted as a child. So they kind of have that to bond over, and she, they can actually have some honesty in their marriage for once. So so he says, "Are you with me?" And she says, "I'm with you. Like, I'm going to support you," basically.
Yeah, and to that point, that moment probably saves their marriage in whatever this show does going forward.
Yes.
Because throughout this show, it kind of feels like they're a marriage by convenience or something. Like, it doesn't really feel like they have much chemistry. But that kind of moment, especially on the heels of Kevin starting to unload on her, kind of I think I mentioned it earlier in another conversation, where it brings them together, and I feel like that's gonna make them this kind of power couple that maybe Conrad and Maeve could have been if they had a shred of decency in either of their bodies. It kind of sets up Bella and Kevin to be this real power couple.
Yeah, I thought that maybe, Kevin did say to his father, when you get out of prison, things will be different around here.
Yeah.
And so you kind of wonder what that means. But at the same time, Kevin told Bella, when she said my father was arrested or whatever. And so he said, "Oh, well, did that feel good, or was that fulfilling to you?" And she said, "Yeah." And he kind of goes, "Oh, well, it wasn't really what you expected, right?" So it almost kind of made me think, like, did he not have second thoughts about killing his rapist, the guard? But did he kind of think that it would be more gratifying than it actually was? And will that determine the power or the role that he has in the Harrigan family going forward? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure that's a very common emotion when you get that moment of closure or
Justice, yeah.
vengeance, justice, whatever. Yeah. I'm sure it's a very common emotion because assuming you're a good person at heart, because taking that type of action over another person is not something that's supposed to be an easy task to accomplish. Killing someone is not supposed to be something that's easy. So if you're a good person at heart, having that type of finality ultimately probably does not do anything for you. It may even eventually make you feel worse, because you were not able to achieve that moment by your own fulfillment. You were achieving that moment in a period of heightened emotion. So I could totally see how like that moment would be a significant letdown to it wasn't what you thought it would be.
Yeah, so I almost kind of wonder, if going forward if he's like the new leader of the Harrigans, then will his history, being assaulted and being abused, his crazy relationship with his parents, like, will that determine how he is as a leader going forward? So I'm interested to see how the show carries on, which it hasn't been renewed yet, but I think there's a good chance it will be. And then we have, because Harry pissed off Kat by not joining her, I think we might have to worry about something going down with that. So
Yeah, I think that'll be a big. I think one what you mentioned before with a kind of uh battle for the throne, so to speak, but because Conrad's not dead, obviously, so you're gonna have this Conrad versus Kevin thing. And I also think Kat's kind of motion to fill this void with Ritchie dead and Conrad in prison is going to be a very significant part of what goes forward. The Harry thing just kind of adds a little bit of an extra dig to it too.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see if this gets picked up, because I would love to see how that story continues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And give us another Paramount show that to be excited over that doesn't have that's not Taylor Sheridan. As much as we love Taylor Sheridan, it's nice to have something a little different.
Yeah. Maybe Guy Ritchie will start just mass writing or producing shows. That would be nice. I would watch him. I think he's doing great. So if you think we're doing great, if you enjoy listening to our show, we would appreciate it if you gave us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think of each episode. Also, make sure you hit that follow button so that you know when new episodes release, since we're a little bit irregular with our schedule. But hey, we're at the mercy of these shows when they release. So if you want to reach us, you can email us at redandredreelreviews@gmail.com. That's the letter N, not and, please. And you can follow the show on Instagram, Red and Red Reel Reviews also. If you happen to be on TikTok, find us both individually at Binge the Ginge or Nutmeg the #2 Palmetto. As always, you can find video episodes on YouTube and Rumble, and stream us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Next up, we're heading back into that hot kitchen for season 4 of The Bear. Really looking forward to that one. And that one's going to drop all at once, which we love. We love to see it. So catch up with us on that in a few weeks. Until the next real review, Red and Red signing out.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world.
Don't act so surprised, Your Highness.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
What? Do what?
No. Try not. Do. Or do not.
Because I don't want no scrubs.
Let the dogs out, like, who let the dogs out? Who?
Who brought this guy along?
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
One more thing. Do me a favor. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I'll take care, all right? None but love for you. None but love for you.
Have any clue what's about to happen to him?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.
Blow up! Peace! Smile, you son of a...
You did. You crazy son of a bitch, you did.
Toodaloo, motherfucker. Hey,
Not funny anymore. TLC references.
Still, nothing. I swear to you.
But as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night, we will not vanish without a fight, we're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.